Hello, and welcome to my post-mortem video for game mechanics and system design. This is my prototype. This is my prototype in Unity. My mechanic is basically a driving game, so you control a car and you drive a car. However, with a slight adjustment is that when you hit some walls, in this case you can see them as green and yellow and red, so not the gray ones, you, instead of colliding with them, you bounce. So as an example, boom, you bounce. And another example, boom, you bounce. Okay, that is the core mechanic of this prototype. So it's basically, oh, boom, bounce. Okay, and the secondary mechanic, and I'll go into detail later on how this happened. The secondary mechanic is basically the colliding with cars makes the two cars merge into one. And depending on what side you are, you turn. This right now is made in such a way that the player always wins due to feedback. But those are the two main mechanics of this game. Okay, so it's driving, colliding with the wall makes you bounce, colliding with a car makes them both merge. Now, there's also some audio, but for this presentation I'm not going to play it to not have it on top of my voice. So that is the mechanic. How it evolved. The main thing in here is that the game originally was not meant to be about bouncing. The game was originally meant to be about the merge. But and I have that here as an image that I can show. This was the original game concept. It was basically merging the cars together into one, and the fastest would win. However, based both on feedback from the players and on myself testing it, and on the fact that this is a single-player prototype, a secondary idea that I had, more like a secondary game mechanic, like a fun extra thing, which was bouncing with the cars, because the idea was that the cars were kind of jelly, ended up being a lot more fun to play with for the players, for myself, and ended up becoming the main mechanic for this game and for the whole level, as you will see. How was the game tested? Well, the game was tested casually with friends, classmates. The forum was used a bit, but based on lack of traction, I decided to not use it that much. And they gave me direct feedback after playing them themselves, or I observed them while they were playing. There was no specific structure to it, because the structure I was keeping it for a different module, and this one I wanted to keep it casual. So what did I change based on feedback? Well, there are multiple things. One is that there was, at the start, there was no hint to the mechanics and how to use them. So what I did is I kind of added some tutorial area, so to speak, which is the part you saw at the beginning, which forces the player, so to speak, to bounce into the wall and to bounce into this wall here. And also, when you want to go into the car areas, you have to go through either of these two hallways, which you have to collide with cars to get in. There was also some problems with the camera. The camera rotated too fast, which was causing dizziness. I reduced the speed, and the camera not having visibility when the camera rotated behind the wall. So what we did is reduce the size of the walls. All the walls are now low enough so that you can see it on top of them. And even the areas with the floor is high enough that it doesn't interfere with the camera. There was also, as I said, we changed priorities from one mechanic to another. We added some sound effects based on player feedback. We also made so that the camera and the car rotate gradually and don't do it instantly when they want to adjust their rotation, and the camera doesn't tilt to the sides. We added, based on player feedback, this area here to kind of have a pinball area for the cars, especially the AI cars, that they just bounce around randomly, and that you as a player can also do that if you wish. We added the hoops based on player feedback, because some players found that was fun and could also kind of reward you for achieving some big jumps or high areas that usually you would just arrive there and there was nothing there. Checkpoints were added when the level started growing, because they found it tedious to have to go through the whole level every time something happened, or they failed or they fall. And based on the feedback, in the past, the collisions with car the fastest would win and the other one would die and disappear, but it didn't feel fun for the player because they didn't understand who was supposed to win the collision. And so what I did is just make it so that the player always wins the collision, and then when two AI cars, the faster one wins. So for strengths and weaknesses, one went well. The thing that I was super happy about was the actual bounce mechanic. So the mechanic where you bounce with the wall was super fun. And what I loved is the feedback that I got when I first had the two mechanics in. The bounce mechanic was the one that I got some feedback where people played it and liked it way more than they expected, which I was super happy to hear. What went wrong? So there were three main things. One was tiny, but influenced everything else, which was that for very long, I had my cars and my players with a rigid body that had discrete collision detection, and of course that impacted and made everything else more difficult. But that was kind of the minor issue. However, the big one was collisions. Physics, like the Unity physics, did not allow me to do what I wanted to do. So I had to basically redesign and code my own way of getting the detections, because collisions don't allow me to get the information of the collision without a collision actually happening, and the trigger don't get enough information by themselves. So what did I need to do? I needed to basically create an effect where a trigger gets triggered, and some ray casts get cast to get all the information I need from hits, and then calculate the positions where the normal and then where the car should go and in what direction. So that was the main issue, because so many issues came out from me having to do it this way, because this is only a two-dimensional system. So if the car comes from an angle, you start having issues. The fact that I'm spawning a different car, the cars could collide with each other. A lot of issues came out of this specific fact, and thus going forward I would need somewhat more experience, or I would need to myself get more experience with physics to be able to kind of design a better and more robust system, especially a 3D one. The other issue that I had is that the car players, the script that controls them, the car, not the player, sorry, are actually the same script for both the player car and the AI car, so to speak. That was a huge mistake that I only started noticing later on, because at some point, every time I wanted to do a change that only affected the player, I had to add conditions, and if it was something that only affected the AI, I had to add conditions. And then you had situations where what I did on the car was getting errors because of the code of the AI and so on. So those were the main issues that I had. Going forward, avoiding this would be just separating them into two distinct entities, even if they look the same, with two different scripts. For the future, I would go forward into kind of a battle royale kind of situation if I added networking and if we polished the crash and merge situation further. Another thing that could also be done is a race with the cars, but the race, instead of being flat, has walls, has like elevations, and you can collide with other cars to make them disappear. And also you could also have an area just like this, where it's mostly focused on platforming and reaching areas. Something else that came from feedback was that we could implement something where you can bounce with other cars. That's something I'm very interested in, at least with your own team members, and I want to implement. And what would really need to be polished is the actual crash and merge with other cars if we want to go in that direction. Apart from that, in the current landscape of marketing and development, it's actually, you have Mario Kart and Rocket League, which would allow us to bring people from those platforms to our game. And it's very different to most of the Crash Derby racers, because it is more family friendly. It is not about violence, it is about bouncing around. And so it would fit the current market with Fall Guys and Splatoon and those kind of games that are more family focused. And that's it. Thank you very much, and have a good day.